To make this project, you're going to need a loom, a cardboard loom, a needle is handy, scissors, yarn, some tape, and if you don't have one of these looms, I'm doing this in the classroom with like 125 kids, so I got some packs of these that are pre-made. If you're doing this for homeschool or just at home for fun, I'm going to show you an easy way to make the loom yourself. Go ahead and print out 1 or 2 of these templates and cut them out. So I'm using a piece of old matboard, which is just a thick piece of cardboard. You could use regular cardboard like what would come in a shipping box, but because these are so long, that may be a little more fragile. I have another video where you can make a cardboard weaving loom, and cardboard is perfect for that size, but this size might be a little bit better if you have a matboard. So I recommend just lining it up if you can, if you have a straight edge. Line it up with the most straight edges that you have. And if you don't want to print 2 of these, then you can just, trace the first edge and then flip it over to line up here at the bottom and then trace the second part. So you really don't have to print 2 unless that's easier for you. Okay, so I've got those 2 sides traced. Now I'm going to just scoot this down a little bit and I'm going to make the lines. And you want it to be about as long as these are. You could go a little longer too. Come down to the bottom, line it up again, and do the same thing. You could use a ruler if you want. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm going to use some large handled scissors just to cut it out. Don't stress out if it's not perfectly straight. The part that you cut really doesn't matter. We're just really wanting the line up between these. Now you're going to go ahead and cut the notches. And I like to use the back edge of my scissors because that's the more powerful side. Now in the rest of the video, I'm using the pre-made ones for my students, but you do exactly the same thing, and these closer notches actually hold in even better than the open notches. So you're just going to start out the exact same way and tape it to the back. The first thing I want you guys to do is take a pencil and write your name on the loom. Then we're going to take a long piece of string and a piece of masking tape, and you are going to tape down your string. This is going to be on the back of your loom. Now going forward to the front, you're going to go straight down parallel. So this is the first notch, so you want to get the first notch down here. You want to pull it fairly tight and then go underneath. And then you're going to go all the way up. And this seems easy, but the biggest mistake that people make is just accidentally skipping one. So if you accidentally skip one, you're going to have to undo it and go back. So just make sure that you're looking as you go. Make sure you're pulling tight, because if it's loosey-goosey, it's going to be a lot harder to weave on. All right, once you get to the end, and you've checked everything is parallel, you're going to flip it over to the back. You're going to add one more piece of tape, and then you're going to cut the end. And now you have a loom that has been warped. These are your warp strings. When it is your turn to get yarn, you want to unroll it until it about touches the floor. This is not an exact science, guys, but I recommend getting one that's about as tall as you. If you get too much yarn, it is really hard to weave with, and if you get too little yarn, you're gonna have to be tying a million knots. Make sure that you guys wind up the yarn ball so that this little string is not going to tangle with all the other strings in the container. Okay, so take your needle, put the yarn through the needle. If it gets crazy like mine, another thing you can do is pinch it here. Pinch those, hold them together, shove it through. Pull a decent tail, cross it here on top, and then you're going to tuck this one under the loop and pull it tight. to hold this onto here. We're gonna start in the middle, just so that we don't have an extra string hanging on the end. So I'm gonna pick a spot in the middle, it doesn't matter exactly where, and I'm gonna go under, over, under, over. And now I'm gonna pull all the way until the very, very end. You're gonna leave this little tail hanging here. And then I'm gonna go back. So I ended here on over because this yarn is over my warp string. So I'm gonna start out by going under, under, over, under, over, under, over, under. And then I'm gonna pull it. The thing that you wanna be careful with is not pulling too tight, because you want to make sure these ends don't start getting pulled in. If you pull too tight, they're gonna get pulled in. So pull gently, and then you'll have this little loop there, and then you just squish it down. Okay, so this ends with under, so what would the next row be? If you said over, you're right. So we're gonna go over on this one, because you want these to be opposite. So this will be over, and this will be under. See how this is over? So your opposite, make sure it's opposite, and you're gonna go ahead and pull it through. And then remember, when you start getting close to the end, go slower, and if there's a loop there, that's good, and then just squish it down. Now, I'll show you what happens if you do it the wrong way. So this ended with over. So if I start over, sometimes you might even say in your head that you're gonna go under, because this should be under, but then you skip and you go under on the second one. So if this happens to you, you're gonna know why. So if I go the same way as I did before, even if I'm doing the over under pattern, watch what happens. I'm starting out with 1, 2, 3 rows. Watch what happens when I pull this one through. It pulls that whole row out. So if you have that happen, just know that you didn't loop your first one. So if this is under, I'm going to go over here. And if that's happening to you a bunch, what you can do, instead of weaving the whole row, you can just double check by doing the first one and making sure it stays on there. And if it stays on, you can go with the rest. And that's a little tight, so I loosened it up a little bit so it doesn't go in. So this one's under, so over, under, over, under, over. Over, under, over, under, over, under, over, under. And we're just going to keep going. If it gets hooked on there, just unhook it, squish it. Okay, let's say you get to the point where you don't have much left. You can go ahead and cut it off if you need to, or mine just came untied. So I'm going to use my fingers to work it through. So this is over, so I'm going to go under, over, under, over. And then when it's about in the middle, if it's still hanging over, just go ahead and give it a little trim and squish it down. And then you're going to cut your next color about as tall as you, or a little less, and then go ahead and loop it through, tie it on, and then we're going to do the same thing. So it gets a little off. So everything's not going to be exactly like this was over and under, but then this one's under as well. So that's okay, as long as we're just going to start here and go the other direction. So, or I can actually go this direction. So I'm going to go, this was over, I'm going to go under here, start in the middle, pull it through, and then just let my tail hang there. Okay, so now remember the important thing is that you're looping opposite. So this ended with over, and you're going to go under here. That way it connects on and doesn't pull everything off. Make sure you're not pulling too hard, and squish it down again. And then if you have a weird tail, you can cut that off. Okay, I want to show one more option. Instead of just leaving your string sticking through there, one more option could be you're going to go halfway through and find these ones that are pointed down. You can go through a couple and pull your yarn down. And you want to go really gently. Now, one tip if you're getting knots is just to pull outward on your knots. That one's not good. Okay, so pull gently through, and then when you trim it, that little tail will hide in your weaving. So that's another little trick you can do. I'm going to pick a different one because this one was in here. I'm going to pick a different one and go up through here. Pull it, pull it, pull it, but I'm going to leave a little tail sticking through just so I don't accidentally pull it out. And I'm gonna, let's see, this one ends on, this string is over here, so I'm gonna go under. It's fine when you're starting a new string if it's not exactly opposite. Uh-oh, what am I doing? As long as on the end, you're going around the string. So this is under, so I'm going over here. And I'm gonna make sure that this yellow string is in here and it's pretty secure. And then I'm gonna trim that tail. Guys, if you get a knot, this happens a ton, especially when your string is too long. I recommend grabbing it and pulling it out. So if you just grab and start pulling it apart, that's your best bet to getting it out. Okay, so that's good. So I'm gonna reach in here and trim this, making sure, guys, that you don't trim your weaving, what you've already done, and that you especially don't trim your warp strings. If you trim your warp strings, you have to start over. There's not really a way to fix that. So this is over, so I'm gonna go under. Another thing, guys, is that the squishing down is kind of important because that's gonna help everything stay in there really well. So it seems like a small little weaving we're doing, but it takes a while when you have to kind of squish it. And if you're keeping your sides out by not pulling too hard, that will be easier. It gets kind of tricky to squish it in. But if your sides get pulled in, guys, that's okay. We're new, we're just learning, so it's not a big deal. And once you start getting pulled inward, there's not a ton you can do to go back. If you choose a thin string like this pink one I'm about to use, you're going to notice that it takes a whole lot more of it to go very far. So it's worth it sometimes for the color or to get something different, especially if you want a thin stripe. But just know that you're going to be weaving a longer time with this. Okay, we're close to the end. I'm going to go ahead and take my needle in one more time towards the middle, squish it down, and then pop this through these strings and trim this, making sure I don't cut my loom. Okay, now you want to take a second and squish some of this down even tighter. Whoa, what's going? See, I thought I'd been going down, but it really could be a lot more tight. So if this happens to you and you still have quite a bit of room left, you could keep going or you can be done. I'm gonna go ahead and be done, and I'm gonna show you what to do to tie it off. The first thing I'm gonna do is take my scissors up to the very top, just to give yourself the most room possible to tie your knot, because that's gonna make it easier. And I'm gonna tie it like tying a shoe, cross it, go under, and pull, and then I'm going to do another one. And now cut this one. Cross it, go under and pull it. And then you'll see now I have 3 left. So all you have to do for this one is just hold 2 strings in one hand and this one string in one hand and do the same type of knot. Okay, and now you can decide how long you want your fringe to be, and you can trim that. There is another type of knot you can do where you hold all of your strings together, you make a loop, and you pull them all through the loop. The tricky thing about this type of knot is you have to hold your loop down here at the bottom, otherwise it can end up in the middle, and that won't really hold your weaving together, but it does look kind of cool. So if you want to try this one, you're going to make a loop, tuck it through here, and pull that one tight, loop, tuck it through, pull it tight. Okay, and then you can trim that. And then up here, you're going to make sure you untape this so that doesn't pull. and then you just pull it off, and then you have yourself a cute little tapestry or a bookmark. So I'm just going to trim this string, and this one you can grab your needle again and just kind of tuck it through the way we've been doing and trim this off. There you go. Now you have a great little bookmark or a weaving tapestry.